Good morning. So we're up to Siman Kuf Samach Beis, and we're up to Halacha Beis. So we're going through in the Netilas Yadayim how much water you need, and now we're talking about a situation where you've only got a little bit of water, and you've got a bit of dirt on your hands. So you've only got a Revi'is of water, which is the smallest amount you need, but you need to use a bit of that to get rid of the lichluch. So how do you deal with that? So says the Machaba Sif Beis, Hanoitel Yadov. When you wash your hands, shofech aleim katzas me'arviis lahosir mehem halichluch v'chol davar shechoitzeitz. You use a little bit of the revi'is to get rid of the dirt, which is choitzeitz, which is being a chatzitza for the on your hands. V'achar kach shofech aleim pam shenis, and then you pour the rest of the revi'is, the rest of the water, to do Netilas Yadayim. V'gam elu hamayim hem tmeim, and this water is also tamei. And then you've used the first bit to get rid of the lichluch, the second bit to just remove it, and then the third is now your Netilas Yadayim l'tair hamayim shal gabi hayadayim, to mimatair your hands. But if you haven't got any dirt on your hands, then shofech al shtei yodav revi'is v'bas, you can pour revi'is just in one go. Ve'ein sorich mayim shnim, you don't even need to pour a second time. Hagar, says the Ramah, v'huadin im hoyu le'mayim rabim, and so too, if you've got a lot of water, reichis techil ma'at k'dei l'hosa halichluch, you just wash your hands just to get rid of any dirt. Va'achar kach shofech revi'is ke'echad, and then you do a revi'is in one go. Ve'ein sorich mayim shlishim, and you don't need a third pouring. Hanoitel Yadov tzorich l'shaf shefeim. You need to rub them together. Zu b'zu. We'll see what that means. Okay, says the Mishnah Berurah Sif Katan Yud Zayin. K'tzas me'arvi'is. So you're talking about a situation where you've only got a revi'is of water, and you use a bit of that revi'is to get rid of the lichluch. To shin Netilas Yadayim, who lo pachas me'revi'is ma'im l'shtei Yadov. Because we've said that your minimum amount for Netilas Yadayim is a revi'is for both hands. The shofech oisal shtei yodav ka'achas. You pour it on one time on your hands, or separately. Mixas al achas or mixas al ashniya. Part of the revi'is on one hand and part on the second hand. Like we've said previously. And if your hands are dirty, and you've only got an exact measure of a revi'is, you should take a little bit of that revi'is to get rid of the dirt. And this is not considered using less than a revi'is, because in other words, you've got exactly a revi'is. You need to use a revi'is to wash Netilas Yadayim. That's the smallest amount. So what do? You take a little bit of the revi'is, you get rid of the lichluch, and then you use the rest of it to wash your hands. You're using less than a revi'is to actually wash your hands. So it explains the levush here in Sif Yuzayin, in Sif Katan Yuzayin, that since that's also coming, the tzorech taharas yadayim, it's also coming to be matah yadayim, the first bit that you use to get rid of the lichluch. Therefore, it's all considered, the whole revi'is is being considered to be used for Netilas Yadayim purposes. Do you want to just put yourself on mute? Okay, Sif Katan Yudches, halichluch, kamoi tit, you've got some dirt, some mud or whatever. So we're talking about lichluch on your hands, which is a chatzitza. So you've got some hard mud or something like that. But something which is a bit wet or whatever it may be, that actually is not even a chatzitza. Sif Yutes, you don't even need to remove it. Sif Yutes, Sif Katan Yutes, heim temeim. The Mishnah in Yadayim says that when you wash your hands, you should wash 2 times. V'hainu, af kashem nakim, even if your hands are clean, below lichluch, without any dirt and no chatzitzas, the ma'im harishonim matar ma'yadayim, because the first lot of water is matah the yadayim, aval heim atzmam tameim heim, but the first lot of water become tomei because they've touched Yadayim, which are skonias, which themselves are tomei. Shenitzmu b'negiyosam b'yodav, they themselves, the first lot of water became tomei through touching your hands. V'hashniim, and the second lot of water, matarim oison, they are mataher that they get rid of the matome waters. V'nigma taras yadayim, and that completes the process. Umiu. When do you need to wash your hands with two pourings? That's only if you don't do b'basachas revi'is. You use a bit of revi'is for the first pouring and a bit of revi'is for the second pouring. And a shafich men yadav achas achas mixas alzu. You need to use a bit of the revi'is to get rid of the dirt. V'chanal. That's when you need to pour twice. When you pour a revi'is, which again is not a lot of water, when you do it on each hand, the whole revi'is, because there's actually no tommy waters there. He's going to say later on, because it's got a din of tefillah. If you're doing one big pouring of at least a revi'is on both hands, or certainly a revi'is on each hand, then really you don't need a second pouring. One would be enough. So again, the Ramah is talking about a situation where you've got exactly a revi'is of water. You haven't got a lot of water. You're on a trip or something, and you only got a revi'is of water, which again is not a lot. It's a becher. Think of a little becher, half, a third or half of a plastic cup of water. Not a lot. And you've got a bit of lichuch. So if you've got a bit tzimtzum, you use a bit of the water to get rid of the dirt, and then you pour once, and you pour the second time. Then you pour a third time. The second time is the first part of the Netilah. It's to be matay Yadayim, but that water is still tomei. And the third pouring is to get rid of the tomei water. That's what he's saying. Shlishis l'taher, says the Mishnah Berurah Sif Kotten Chof, v'heim nikroim shniyim be'etzem Netilah. This is the second pouring for Netilah purposes. Remember, the first one was just to get rid of the lichluch. To Palma Rishon shechoshav kan einem etzem Netilah, because the first one wasn't really part of the Netilah. Ela la'avor lichluch, it was just to get rid of the dirt that was on your hands. V'da. That's which the Mechaber says, it's all considered one. It's got to go around the whole hand. At least in this time 2 and time 3, it's got to cover the whole hands. It's got to be quite carefully done. But he says, but if you pour revi'is in one time, then that's enough. Hatam, the reasoning is, the revi'is b'basachas am sif kosan chaf aleph, the revi'is in one time are so kamikveh. The point is that when you pour a revi'is in one go, it's like a mikveh, to metaheres, because that is metaher, the gamma mayim tahirim, and the water themselves are actually tahar. There is no tommy water to get rid of. And therefore, you really don't need a second pouring. When, however, you have some dirt on your hand, and you've got to use some of the revi'is to get rid of the dirt, and therefore you have not got left a complete revi'is, so then you need dafka shneim, which is what I explained before. In that situation, you will always need a second pouring. If you've only got a revi'is, you should just pour it twice. In other words, half revi'is and half revi'is also. If you want to pour the whole revi'is in one go, you still need maim shneim. Little revi'is al kol yad val gam al shneim. You should try and use revi'is for the first and second pouring. This is certainly ideal. If you've got lots of water readily available. But to run after and find some water nearer the Ein Tzarech, you don't actually need to do that. The majority of Poskim are Mekel, that when you pour one whole revi'is over your hands, that is enough and you don't need to do a second pouring. And that's how many Achronim hold. Ma'im Rabbim, says the Mishnah Berurah, Hainu afilu rak ma'ad yosim revi'is. I.e., even if you have a little bit more than revi'is, that you can use a bit of that to get rid of the lichluch, and then you've got a revi'is complete, shalem, to use for Netilas Yadayim. Tzorich l'shaf shafam. So the Ramah said at the end that you should sort of rub your hands together. Hainu, says the Mishnah Berurah, Sif Kotan Chaf Gimel, afilu not revi'is al kol yad v'yad. Even if you did a revi'is on each hand, v'chein mat yadayim, b'mat b'yodov, and so too if you're mat b'yodov, zu b'zu nira. What's the purpose of this? Kadei lahaver alichluch heitzav heitzav, to make sure all the lichluch has gone away. V'urak lechatchila v'lo lekuva v'ayim b'bach, and that's only lechatchila to sort of rub your hands together. You don't really need to do that. It's not ma'akev. Okay, Sif Gimel, notol miksas yodai. V'chozar v'hoisif v'notel hanishar miyodai. If you pour a little bit of water on your hands, v'hoisif v'notel hanishar miyodai, and then you want to be moisif, harizu yodai tameya k'moshe hoisa. You haven't done Netilas Yadayim. You just poured a bit of water on your hands. That is not a netila. De'ein netila chatzoin. You can't do netilas in half measures. It's got to be one complete pouring. And if you've still got some water when you from the first spill, I don't want to call it in the netila, you spilled a bit of water on your hands, and it hasn't covered your whole hands, it wasn't a proper netila, that water is now tomei. So he says if you've got enough water there, which is tefeach amanas latfiach, which is wet enough that it's going to wet something else, we'll define it soon, hari zu tahira, then that will be enough. But medvar mamurim bebaim rishonim, aval b'shniim, noitel mixas yodav v'chayzer moisev ha-mixos, and you should do it again. Says the Mishnah. The Mishnah will explain what's going on. Sif Koton Chaf Hei. Mixas Yodov. Shebepam Achas Lo Higiu Hamayim Ad HaPerek. In the first spill of the water, the water didn't reach until the perek, until the wrist. Shehu Shia Netila. Because that is the shear of Netila. That's how much water you need. Yeah, we said that. We've said that previously. Either there is one opinion which says you need to pour to the wrist, and one says you need to the knuckles. Whatever, either way, whichever one you do. You pour a little bit of the water, it dries, and then you want to pour again. Well, that's the first one wasn't considered a netila. According to the opinion which says you need to the knuckles, you just pour a little bit over their fingers, over some of the fingers. And according to the other opinion, the first opinion there, you pour it only over part of the hand. So there, and it's dried up now. That wasn't a netila. And it's now dried from the first pouring. And there isn't any water there which is still moist. Then you've got to get rid of that water. You've got to do it again. That would be okay. So in other words, the Mechaber is saying, let's just read the Mechaber again to understand it. Not on mixas yodov, you pour a little bit of the water on your hands. Again, according to the previous thing, either if you've got to wash till there, you do a little bit on your hand there, or according to the opinion which you need to the knuckles, you pour a little bit over some of the fingers. That's not a netila. And yodov tameh k'moshe hoisa, your hands as tomei, and you can't just pour a bit more and do it in sort of bit piecemeal. That's not going to work. Rather, you've got to do a proper netila again. Okay. Sifkot and Chav Zayin. The Hayodav Tameh K'moshe Hoisa. V'tzorich little mechodash al kol hayad kedin netila. You've got to do netilas time again. Now, what if you haven't got water which is al manas latfiach? It's not, your hands are not moist enough that if somebody else would touch them, they can sort of make somebody else wet. But it's still a little bit wet. Do you need to dry them before you do the second netila? So says the Mishnah Berurah, ve'ein tzorich lenagiv mitchila. You don't need to dry them. He brings in footnote 22. He says, "Uchein ze kosva be'aloch leel in mayim rishonim shenoitzel kadei lahosar alichluch me'al yodov." In the previous sif we just mentioned, we spoke about just now, when you use a bit of the Revi'is to clean your hands, do you actually have to dry them or not? So according to the Mishnah Berurah and the Be'halacha previously, you do not need to. He brings a Chazon Ish who says you do need to. So that's the Machlokas. But the Mishnah Berurah in Be'halacha says you don't need to actually dry them. And he says over here as well, Ve'ein tzorich l'nagev mitchila, your hands can still be a little bit wet from removing the dirt, and then you want to do Netilas Yadayim. According to Mishnah Berurah, you can go straight in and just do Netilas Yadayim. Okay, carrying on the Mishnah Berurah, Sif Koton Chav Ches, De'ein netila l'chatzoin. So again, you did a little bit of a pouring, but it didn't cover all your hands. It was just like almost like some water from the tap fell, or just from the keli. You can't just do a bit more. That doesn't help. That's not Netilas Yadayim. However, says the Mechaber, if you've got on your hands water which is tofech al manas latfiach, then you can just then do the second pouring, because that's considered still part of the first pouring. Says the Mishnah Berurah Sif Kotan Chavtes, tofech al manas latfiach, hainu shenisha aleha mayim kol kach, that you've got enough water, that if someone touches it, his hand will be wet, that he can moisten something else. Therefore, your first pouring has not yet finished. And you can pour again, and it's mitzaref. It's like a second netila. It's like the same netila. Okay, and then that would work. Harizu tahira. Yesh machronim shekosfu dedavka b'di'eved ein tzorech lachsa b'tol. This is only b'di'eved. You don't have to do it again. Aval lechatchila tzorech little b'bas achas kol hayad. Lechatchila you should pour each hand again. V'lav dafka b'shvicha achas. Lav dafka with one pouring. Alafilu b'shtei shvichas, even with two pourings. Kol shelo shah ben time class. So long as there was no delay in between, k'shvicha achas dom, it's considered like shvicha achas. Valkein im noitel yodov me handpas. A handpas, he says at the bottom, is chovis katana hanisha biyad, some sort of small keli. Al yidei hatzina shekorin krano hendela. Yeah, some sort of, it's got some sort of tap, like a pump or something. Shepiv tsar, it's got a very thin opening. V'tzorich leposche lesogra v'lechol shvicha shvicha. With every pouring, it needs a new effort, a new exertion. That it comes, that each time it comes mikoach gavra from a human effort. Like we said previously. If even if you're sort of pressing and then water's coming out each time, that is considered one shvicha. It's not enough of a hefsek to make it to break it up. If you have got a regular kli, it's much better to use that. Okay, so just to summarize, that if you've got a revi'is of water, which is your minimum share, and in Sif Gimel you've got a bit of lichluch on your hands, you can use a bit of that water to remove the lichluch, and then you pour from the remnant. You haven't got a revi'is. The whole thing was matay Yadayim. That is sufficient. In Sif Gimel, that was Sif base. In Sif Gimel, we said that if you wash, if you just you pour and then a bit of water drips on your hands, if you've waited long enough and it's dried up, then you need to pour again. You need to Netilas time again. But if there's still water there and it's al manas latfiach, it's wet enough that if someone else will touch it, it will make something else wet. Then you can just finish off, and that's considered one netila. Okay, we'll leave it there.